On today's show, I sit down with Paul Reddick. We talk about his youth days, how he got into coaching, the 567 Academy that he has, as well as where he sees things going.
Welcome to another episode of the Baseball Awakening Podcast, where we dive into the raw, unfiltered, unsexy side of player development. Get ready for some knowledge bombs with your host, Geoff Rottmayer.
Welcome to the Baseball Awakening Podcast. I'm Geoff Rottmayer, and today I'm sitting down with Paul Reddick. He has the Baseball Education Center online, the 567 Academy, as well as having his own podcast, the 567 Show. Paul, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Geoff. How are you?
I'm doing great. You know, Paul, you are a guy that had done some amazing work in the baseball community, and you continue to do so, providing a lot of value to a lot of coaches, dads, and players. So having been at this thing for as long as you have, and now looking at it from the look of things, it looks like you're really focusing in on the 567 pitcher and the 567 dad program. And I love the concept. I understand the concept of it, and I think it's great considering the nature of youth baseball and how different it is. And I want to talk a lot about that today, but let's just kind of start with Paul Reddick, the youth player, and then Paul Reddick going into coaching.
Well, the first part will be very quick. So, I was really probably an average kid growing up. I had a brother who was a terrific player, and so I spent most of my life, like we all do, I wanted to be like my brother. So between somewhere in like 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade, 9th grade, somewhere in there, after Little League, it kind of clicked for me like that, oh, you actually have to like work hard. You actually have to do all these things. And so I kind of like willed myself into a player. And I had a unique pedigree. I grew up on the campus of Seton Hall University. My mom worked there. So I was at that campus, like, I don't know, all the time. And so I used to spend my summers there at the baseball camp, like however many weeks there were in the summer. And I, as a kid, I like took batting practice with like Craig Biggio and Mo Vaughn and John Valentin. And like, I thought every kid did that stuff. You know, I didn't know. So I had this like incredible pedigree of growing up around this program at Seton Hall University that my brother went on to play for. But so in 7th and 8th grade, my brother kind of became a star player at Seton Hall Prep. And like, I wanted that too, right? I wanted to be like my brother. So I willed myself to be a great player. My freshman year at Seton Hall Prep just could not have went better. Had a great year. In the summertime, I was put on the team with the varsity players, the like main roster, the 18 roster. So it was like, I was on my way. And then, in my sophomore year, I failed off the baseball team. I couldn't get the grades together. And, that was probably the worst thing that ever happened to me. And my junior year, I failed off again. And my senior year, I actually did make the grades. And 2 weeks before baseball tryouts, I got chickenpox. So like when you're 17 and you have chickenpox, it's a big deal. It's serious. And now, so that was kind of believe me, the chickenpox were not the reason I did not really continue to play baseball. So I'd say just an average player that just, I really screwed up a lot of things. But the best thing that ever happened to me was failing off the baseball team, because that's when I got a peek into this other side of baseball. So my coach at the time was Mike Shepard Jr., who's still the coach there. And I'm 45, so it gives you kind of some context of that. It's been a while. He had these videotapes, these VHS tapes, that he would allow us to sign out and sign back in for us to learn. And so because I couldn't play on the team, I would sign out these videotapes. And like, I would watch these tapes from Tom House and Gordy Gillespie and Ron Polk and all the, what was his name from Miami? I can't remember his name. I can picture him as clear as day. It was Mark Marquis of Stanford. I can't remember, the coach of Miami. But I saw this other side of baseball. And so the foundation for me as a coach was really like in those days where I was like, wait a minute, there's more to just doing this. Like there's actually like some tactics and some science behind it and some stuff. And I just remember that being, kind of like the first time you hear your favorite music group, right? Something just sounds different about them. And that was that experience for me. So, and if you tell me where you want, I could go into my coaching days because it's actually quite funny.
Let's jump into that.
Yeah. So I was 17 years old, a senior at Seton Hall Prep. I was sick. I was like 140 pounds. And quite honestly, I did not think I had much of a future in anything. Like I thought I was going to go work at, 7-Eleven or UPS or something like that. That's just what I was going to do. And because like nothing had worked out for me. Like I wasn't a great student. I was in a hard school, looking back on it, Seton Hall Prep, really tough school. So maybe in another school I would have been an average student, but so I really kind of 17-year-old kid with really no future. And but I did like this girl. And her name was Rose, and she was the scorekeeper for the freshman baseball team at Roselle Catholic High School. And a lot of the kids I grew up with in Union, New Jersey, they went to that school. I went to Seton Hall Prep because my mom worked there. And so I used to drive from Seton Hall Prep to go. I wasn't very swift at picking up girls or asking people out. I went to an all-boys school. I was an Irish Catholic kid. These skills are not taught, right? And so I used to show up at the games. And I guess now you would call it stalking, and just sit there long enough, maybe that she would notice me and say hi to her and talk to her. And that was my plan, was I would just stay around long enough that she would get the point. So the coach of that team was a guy named Brother John. And Brother John was like a priest, a brother. And he would see me at these games. And like, I was the only one at these games in the middle of Warren-Aco Park in Roselle, New Jersey. And he would say like, he called on, I was like, do you have a brother on the team? Family member? He's like, no. He's like, well, what are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, well, like I'm here to support Rose. She's the scorekeeper. I'm here to support her. And he was just kind of like, oh, that's pretty, yeah. Like here's essentially a priest telling me like I have no moves, right? And so he goes, well, look, you want to help out with the team? I was like, yeah, sure. So I started hitting fungos and helping out, throwing batting practice, and he asked me, he said, there's this kid on the team, Conrad. He's struggling a little bit. He's going to lose his position unless he starts hitting. Maybe you can work on him, motivate him. You're young. You're closer to his age. And so I did. And I just kind of did everything that I was taught to do by my coaches at that point. And the next game came around, and Conrad got up to the plate. And like, I probably as nervous as I ever was. And he hit the first ball up the middle for a base hit. And, he rounded first base, and he looked back and he pointed at me. Nice. Like, thank you. And I'm like, and it was like my soul took its first breath.
Yeah.
I just knew on that day that God had made me a coach, and that's what I was supposed to do. So that started it. That was so. From I'm a Christian man, so I believe all these things work out this way, and I'm kind of very glad I did not succeed as a player. That's how it started.
Awesome. Let's jump back and talk about the issue that you had in school, keeping the grades up. Obviously that's a lesson that you learn and can share from, something that you can speak from experience in teaching kids. So how did this conversation in teaching the kids to say, hey, look, your grades are super important, but then they look at you and see what you've been able to accomplish. So how does that conversation go? So
I've used that story a lot, even though it did work out for me in the long term, but it does make for a nice kind of story when you tell it all at once.
Yeah.
But a lot of the reason why I succeeded as a coach was because of the people that I met along the way. I had a mentor named Jack Burns, who was like a second father to me, still is. And he was like, the dean of coaches in Union County at the time, took me under his wing and really guided me. I had another mentor, Tom House and Ray Korn, and then I eventually worked for Yogi Berra. So I had a lot of great people that helped me along that way. But I have told the story about failing off the team to thousands of kids. And I know that story happened for a reason because I do now have a drum to beat into the world.
Right.
And I've never hidden that story because I know what an impact it can have. So what I do tell the kids is, as much as like when you tell it as a whole long story, as God has a plan for everybody, and that's true.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you that I remember sitting on the bus the day I failed off the baseball team. I had to go into my locker and take out my stuff, and I left the first class or the last class of the day very early so I could get into my locker before my teammates came. And I had to get on the bus to go home, and I remember them walking down the hill to our practice field and the bus pulling away. And those were my guys, those were my buddies. We played together for a better part of 2 years, and they were going to practice and I was going home, and I was embarrassed, and I had let them down. I probably would have, I don't know how it would have worked out, but I'd like to think I'd have been a good contributor on that team. So for how it's all worked out, man, that was a very difficult time of my life, my, sophomore, junior, senior year of high school. And so here's, I believe that all kids are more than baseball players, but, had I rewrite history, I probably would have liked to have played, even though it didn't work out that way. But I still feel like when I think about that time, I'll never forget two guys in particular, Dom Cedicino and John McNish, who I probably have not seen or talked to since high school. But I remember specifically looking at them and going, man, like those are my buddies, and they're going to practice and I let them down. So, as much as I tell the story, it works out well. It was hard, it wasn't easy.
Right. So your high school coach, with him letting you check out the videos and the book, he obviously wanted something for you.
Yeah.
So what impact did he have in the role that he played in your life at that time, and how did it shape the direction things have gone for you?
So, my coach was Mike Shepard Jr. in high school. And so his father was Mike Shepard Sr., who was the coach of Seton Hall University. So it was like this family, this baseball family and I had grown up in. And I remember going in that day when I found out I had failed, and asked him if he could talk to the teacher to get me extra credit or something to do. And like begging him, and I may have been crying. I don't remember. There was definitely something welling up in there, because like in that position too, like my mother was a doctor, a professor at Seton Hall University. My brother was a superstar baseball player at Seton Hall University. And here I am like the moron, Right. And he said to me, he said, no, wouldn't do it. And I remember saying, like, I've seen you do this for other kids. I've heard this. And he said something to the effect, but all those other kids were working up to their potential and you're not. And, at the time, right, we never want those lessons at the time, right? We never want to eat our spinach, right. But we know in the long term. So, as far as that goes, like, yeah, I'm glad he didn't get me that grade.
Yeah.
I'm at the time I wanted to, man. I probably cursed all the way out, saying how he was being unfair to me, but he was doing the best thing for me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was super, super important, for me at that time. Yeah.
So now you're getting into coaching and stuff. Coaching is a tough road. It's tough to make it. It's tough to make money. And it's just tough. And when you're in it, but, it's like one of those things that when you're in it, you just love it. So can you talk a little bit about your coaching path and some of the online businesses that you started along the way? Yeah,
what I would also say, I always say this when I talk about coaching. If anyone's listening to this, if you can stop coaching, if you're a coach and you can stop doing it, I would stop doing it.
Yeah.
If you can bring yourself to stop doing it, you should stop, because a true coach, a real coach, cannot stop under any circumstance.
Right. Right. No.
So if it is in you to not coach, and you could just say, you know what, I don't need this, then I think you should go into something else.
Yeah.
Because it really has to be in your soul to really do it. So after that, I I got a position. I was an assistant baseball coach with the Junior American Legion, the Junior American Roselle American Legion. I met the guy I said before, Jack Burns, who became like my second father. And Jack, he saw something in me, and that I certainly didn't see in myself at that time. And he would tell me every day that I was going to be a star. I was going to be a star coach, and I was, he would encourage me. And man, just getting emotional thinking about the guy. I love him so much, because I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here today if it was not for Jack Burns, because he really turned that around for me. And so the first year I coached with him, he said, "You stand right next to me. You stand right next to me." And because Jack had other coaches, Jack always had a bunch of other coaches he was developing, and he was like, "You stand next to me, and you stay 1 foot from me all the time." And I did for a whole summer. And what he would do is he would say, "You see that guy? See, he made this out. He should not have taken, this guy should have backed up. And you see that bunt? It was too close to the pitcher. You got to do this. When you're working on practice, you got to, all these different things."
Nice.
The second year, he put me at first base, and he taught me how to coach first base.
Nice.
Which is like insane to think about today, right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
Everybody goes,
right.
"Just go stand there," right? But he taught me, he was like, when a kid dives back, he's got to touch this part of the base. He's got to look over his left shoulder, so to look for a pass ball, and you've got to remind him of the count and the strikes and the outs and where he's going to go on a ground ball, where he's going to go, all these things, right?
Right.
And then the second year, I coached third base, and he taught me how to give signs, and he taught me how to manage runners on base paths, and he taught me how to construct an offense and to develop a lineup, and then the fourth year, he let me run the whole thing.
Wow.
And he was still the head coach. In no way, there's no
right.
there's no other head coach when a guy named like Jack Burns is on the field. He's the head coach.
Right.
And then after those 4 years, he kicked me out. He kicked me out, and he kicked me out of the nest. There was no more for him to teach me, and he knew that. And so through his connections, I was able to connect with a guy named Ray Korn. And Ray Korn was the head coach of Elizabeth High School, which was the biggest high school in New Jersey. And I was an assistant there for Ray for 2 years. This was a powerhouse program, a couple of national titles in the 80s and 90s, dozens of players drafted, all kinds of state, one of those guys, won 1,000 games. And so I worked with him for 2 years. And so for the first 6 years of my coaching career, I had these two mentors that just taught me everything. And I feel sorry for coaches who are starting today.
Yeah. Because
the first 6 years of my life, of my coaching career, every mistake I made was a win or a loss on someone else's record.
Right.
It was not, if I made a mistake waving a guy in, didn't count, the loss didn't count on me. And I don't say that to be like, a wise guy or anything, but just, I made my mistake under the guidance of someone else. And when I made a mistake, Jack Burns used to say, "You're stupid too much." So to me sometimes, and that was the nicest way of him saying, but he would come back and say, "Here's what you should have done."
Yeah.
And I feel sorry for coaches who start today, because if I were a coach starting out today, probably 2 years into it, I'd have had my own tournament team, and now you don't know how to coach, and now you're trying to coach pressure situations and all this kind of stuff. So I was very grateful for that. So that was the first 6 years of my coaching career.
Awesome, man. It's nice to have a mentor type to learn from, to ask questions, and to fail, which is huge. And for the young coaches, there are really any coaches that are listening to this, I highly recommend seeking out mentors. They're great, and allow them to be hard on you and to push you to be great. So now, Paul, while you're coaching, you get into the online world. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So after Elizabeth High, I was the head baseball coach at Union Catholic for a few years, but I transitioned into professional baseball coaching and scouting and doing all that. And when you're scouting, right, you don't make any money. Right? You don't get paid anything really when you're starting out, or just whatever base expenses. So there's no, you don't make any money doing that. It looks like a glamorous job from the outside. It's really not. And so when you're doing these things and you're a young coach and you're scouting, you're coaching, you have to do a million things to piece together some kind of livable income, right?
Right.
And And throughout most of this time, I was living in my grandmother's attic, and just as happy as like could be. And so I was giving camps, clinics, lessons, any way that I could, right, to piece together an income. So I wrote a book with Tom House. We co-wrote a book called The Picture Perfect Pitcher, and we did a series of videos. And so basically, what we did is we that was the first thing we were selling those videos. Our first website was a PDF that you had to print out, mail in with a check. And so this one thing kind of led to another, and the internet kind of took off. We were there at the right time. We started basically publishing what was my system for pitching that I was doing with my offline pitchers. I ran a year-round pitching program, and we just put that on VHS tapes at first, and then DVDs, and then digital. And then it just kind of really evolved over the years into now like obviously a much larger digital platform, where we publish a lot of other coaches and work with a lot of other inventors of products and equipment. We have a lot of coaches that we work with to do their marketing, do everything. So it just kind of evolved. It was not by plan. Honestly, what I was trying to do is if I could have made, like $40 a day, that would have been great, because that would have given me like less lesson that I had to do every day, you know?
Yeah.
So it just kind of evolved from there, and it just got to a tipping point where I was doing so many lessons, so many clinics, so many camps. I was 50 pounds heavier than I am today. And I was drinking 4 20-ounce Starbucks coffees per day. Whew. At the height of all that to stay. Yeah. And then you know what you have to do to come down from that, right? So I was coming home and having a couple of beers and stuff like that. And alcohol and Reddick is not an equation that it does anything positive in history. So, so it just kind of evolved at the right time. And then we just took the leap to say, all right, I'm going to try and make this really go. And we did. So it's been great. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, I mean, when I got into coaching, man, I probably bought every single thing that was on your site. If there was something out there on baseball, I invested in it, because I realized pretty quick, like when I got done playing, that coaching and playing is vastly different. So now you have taken a direction that I really like with the 5-6-7 program. And I follow that. And I think, with the current culture and how different it is, the kids are getting harder to relate to because of what they are growing up with. So can you talk a little bit about what the 5-6-7 is and what you're doing with it?
Yeah. So, it's hard to really pinpoint exactly when, but probably somewhere in the 4 or 5 years ago, I would make time in my schedule to, just anybody could call me. They could set up a call and talk about anything. Like, I didn't know what they were going to say when I picked up the phone, but just like any customers, actually anybody, not only customers of ours, but like, and the reason why I did that is because there were a lot of people who took my call. A lot of people that took my call. I figured out, just as a side note, I figured out very early. I was listening to a radio show, and I think it was Augie Garrido who was on the radio show. And it was like 8 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And he was talking about how he was the only person in the office. And he gets there at 7 a.m. and he's always the only person in the office for a couple hours because he needs to get work done. And I was like, So if I called the baseball office at 7:30 in the morning, there's nobody there. There's no assistant, no administrators or anything. It's going to and I stumbled upon a loophole that if I called Mike Martin and Mark Marquis and Skip Bertman and Augie Garrido and all these guys at 7 o'clock in the morning, they were in the office and no one else was there. So if the phone rang, if your phone rings at 7 o'clock in the morning and you're at the office, you got to think it's your wife, right? Or somebody, right? So you pick up the phone. So these guys would pick up the phone.
Nice.
And I would talk to them and I would ask them all kinds of questions, and probably it was probably about, here's this kid again, but I was grateful for that. So I'll never forget that a lot of people picked up the phone for me. I was always grateful for that. So I always wanted to make that opportunity available. Nice. And so, what I noticed is that, I used to get questions on like, what do I do for my kid? He's training for, whatever high school season, or needs to throw a curveball, or needs to throw harder, or whatever it was. Those were the questions I was getting asked. And then they started to shift. They started to shift like, I don't know what to say to my son after a tough loss. I don't know. Me and my son are not kidding. We're arguing a lot over baseball. My son wants to quit baseball. I have an 8-year-old. I don't know what the next step for him is. I don't know if I should put him on a tournament team or a travel team. And I'm hearing all these different opinions. And it was a total shift. And what happened was the game that our fathers played, I got to imagine we're probably around the same age, right?
Yeah.
So the game that our fathers played and the game that we played were probably the same. Ours was probably a little more organized than theirs were, but they played, in the spring, you played a season. There was a town tournament, a town championship on July 4th. There was an all-star team that maybe played a couple weeks in the Cooperstown thing and then were eliminated. Yeah. And then everybody went on vacation in August and see you next spring.
Right.
So our fathers could guide us through that process. They could mentor us and tell us, well, here's how to, all that kind of stuff. So what happens is that now the game is completely different.
Right.
Radically different. So now the father is looking at the game their son is playing is completely different. And he has no experience. He has no foundation. He's got no background to help or guide his son through it. So I've had a father say to me, my little league team practiced 3 times a week during the season when I was a kid. My son's team practiced 3 days a week in the off season.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And one father fathers tell me that I never played a championship game in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like my son plays in them all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know what to say to him,
Yeah.
Because when we were kids, there weren't many opportunities for championship games, right? There's only a couple opportunities per year.
Right.
So from that perspective, fathers are starting to get lost. Not only that, the communication system that we have is different. So a father, we went outside, we talked, we played, we interacted. The most disconnected communication that we had was a telephone call. And now kids today text, snap, tweet, comment, like, share. Yeah. They have a completely different communication system.
Yeah.
So the father today can be a little bit lost in not only how to guide his son in the game, but how to guide his son like through life. Because the advice our fathers gave to us was probably the advice their fathers gave to them. But we cannot pass that same advice on to our children. It is a completely different world that they are living in. So that's what kind of started us down that path to really focus on just helping dads, first and foremost, raise their sons in the right way. I hope my dogs aren't driving you nuts there. There's somebody outside. But also too, like, how do we make the most of this game without burning our kids out, without making them dislike the game or doing too much too soon, and so those are kind of things. I spend most of my time now. I actually don't run the day-to-day operations of Baseball Education Center anymore. I spend most of my day now coaching dads. It's like God made me a coach, and I thought He made me a baseball coach, and that was part of it. But really now it's like I so far coaching dads, men, on either how to create relationships for their son, recreate, or just start one from scratch, or even just helping them get their family or their team, organized and on the same page, like in this kind of new world we're all in. So
that's nice. I find myself doing that. The conversation, like you said, has gone from talking baseball to we're not even really talking baseball anymore. And it's been more about the communication and the relating part. And it's tough, like you said, because the world is so different. So the world is just so different. So with your 5, 6, 7, can you expand on that? What does the 5, 6, 7 mean?
Yeah. So the best way I could do it is to do it for you.
Okay.
That's the best way I could do it. So what would be something like, so let's take this podcast. What would be a goal that you would have with this podcast? Like a hard goal, not just like I want to change the world, like a hard goal.
The goal was to learn and to get myself out there a little bit.
Okay. So let's go. Like, so to get yourself out there is really that's that hard goal, right? You want to get yourself out there.
Right.
And be still. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to play a game.
Yep.
We're going to play a game. Are you the type of coach that just wants to play games, or do you want to win games?
I want to play a game.
You don't want to win?
Oh, of course you want to win, but you want to play.
Well, let's play to win this one.
Okay, let's play to win.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you the same question 6 times in a row. And the way to win the game is speed. You give me the first word or two that pops into your mind as fast as you can. Fair enough? Okay. What's important to you about getting yourself out there? In a word or two.
My business.
Yeah. What about your business? Like to grow
To grow it.
Yep. Okay. So really it's to grow your business.
Right.
So what's important to you about being a man who grows his business?
To provide for my family.
Yeah. So what's important to you in a word or two about being a man who's able to provide for his family?
My daughter.
What about her?
To be able to give her some stability in life.
Okay. So you want to give your daughter stability in life. What's important to you about giving your daughter stability in life? What's important to you about being a father who gives his daughter stability? Now, this is where it gets tough. This is why it's the 5, 6, 7.
So this is
now we're at 5. 4.
We're at 4 right now.
This is where it gets tough. We're on 5. We're going
on
into
5
5
right
now. So what?
Okay.
Yeah. So what's important to you about being a father who provides his daughter with stability to you, in a word or two?
Shoot. Yeah, so she can. Man, this is tough, Paul.
Here's why it's tough, and here's why it's tough because this is probably the first time that you've been asked questions at this level.
Yeah.
So what we're getting to now, and I'll explain to you the basis of it, but I'll explain to you why it is. But I want you to think on one word about why it's important for you to be a father who provides his daughter with stability.
Receive a Baseball Awakening decal by subscribing on iTunes and leaving an objective review. To claim your decals, screenshot the review and email it to Geoff@baseballawakening.com. That's GEOFF at baseballawakening.com, and we'll get that your way.
It's my duty.
Yeah. Your duty as a father.
Yeah.
So what's important to you about being a father who takes care of his duties? In a word or two.
So that she knows that I care and that I love her.
Yeah. So she knows you love her. What's important to you about being a man, a father, whose daughter knows her father loves her? What's important about that to you? In a word or two. It's right there. If you're looking back, you're combing gray hair, you're on a rocking chair, and you're looking back and you were provided that stability, what would that mean to you? What's important about that as you look back on it?
Uh,
Now, the longer you take with it, the more meaningful the word is.
the longer it takes, the more meaningful the word is.
Yeah, because we're getting it deeper inside of you.
I feel like it goes back to, you know, her having the lifestyle that she can be proud of, or be proud of me, and or go on and kind of do her own thing.
Yeah. So sometimes, like, is it that she'll know you laid a foundation for her?
Right.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Here's why it takes so long to get to 5, 6, 7. Because, and this is why the work that I've done with dads over the last 4 years has been so meaningful for me, more meaningful than anything I've done. Is that, so if, let's say we were in a coaching situation together, and you came to me for coaching, as many dads do, even business owners do, and I say, we're going to talk about working on your podcast. Now, I do a podcast. Podcast's hard.
Right.
It's, you know, like, people really don't realize, right? It's hard to do a podcast, do interviews, prepare. It's not just, you just don't show up. It doesn't all come out perfectly, right? It's like making music, right? It's not a formula to it.
Right.
But if I say to you, doing that is going to be hard. There's going to be times where you're going to have to put in extra work, editing things, marketing things, moving, maybe taking some risks, maybe some chances. And if you focus on the success of your podcast, you will stop when things get super, super hard. But if I were coaching you, and I said to you, Geoff, you're not doing a podcast here. I want you to focus on the foundation that you are laying for your daughter, so that when she sees what you've accomplished, you're a model for her. She'll know you love her and you've accomplished your duty as a father by providing her that stability. Now, would you be ready to go to work?
Absolutely. No, that's a good way of looking
at it. Yeah. So if we stay at the level of your podcast, it's always going to be to-do list, work, organization, right? But if I can get you to the level of what's the deepest needs for you, what's most true about you, and just want to compliment you too, is that the people that take the longest to answer are the ones that have the deepest and most rooted feelings, because they're just much more meaningful, you know, to them, that the words are so difficult to match the feeling.
Right.
So when we motivate players, or we motivate anybody, we do all the wrong things. We think what motivates us will motivate them. So what motivates me will not motivate you. What motivated your dad will not motivate you. Right. And so oftentimes parents will say, like, when I was a kid, all I want to do is go out and throw the ball against the ball. All these kids want to do is watch their iPads. I'm like, well, yeah, because you didn't have iPads then.
Right.
You know, like, we didn't have anything, right? So we went outside. These kids have distractions. They have interference. The second thing is we think what motivates others will motivate them. You know, we always have that robo baseball kid that's in every town, right? The kid who wakes up 4 o'clock in the morning, takes 5,000 swings, works out for an hour, drinks cold pressed juice from the Himalayas, and then he goes to school, and then his mental game coach picks him up. He does a session on the way to the cages. He works out again, does another 5,000 swings, and then he goes to bed listening to binaural beats of line drives being hit, right? There's always that kid, right?
Right.
And we could hold him up as an example of, like, wow, look how dedicated, how focused that kid is. First of all, my phone rings an awful lot when a kid like that hits a wall. And when they hit a wall, it's usually pretty ugly, because there's usually something unhealthy fueling that kind of motivation. Mm-hmm. The second thing is, every time we tell our kids they should be like somebody else, we're telling them that who they are is not important or not good enough. And I cringe at the times as a coach, when I look back and say, Maddie, you need to put out more like Mikey, or Mikey, you need to be more like Teddy. And, you know, I cringe. I think about the things I said to kids. Yeah. And then the third motivational mistake is that we think what should motivate them will motivate them. So if I got a room full of 16-year-old baseball players and I say, who wants to play D1? Every hand goes up.
Right.
because their hand went up, I might make the mistake that that's what will motivate them, which is not true at all. Because, so I was watching, there was a video some guy posted online, and it was this baseball coach who was yelling at his team. You know, they were kind of dragging a little bit in practice. And he's yelling at him. He's like chewing him out. And he's saying, oh, you got plenty of energy when you get to your girlfriend's house tonight. And there's a team that's going to working hard right now, and they're going to kick your butt when it comes time. And then he pointed to like someone else off camera and said, you see that guy? He's been to the show. He did his work. He got his. And then the team like got up and started running and started making all this. And all that is fear, manipulation, and comparing you to somebody else, that somebody else somehow has a better life.
Yeah.
And that some team is going to outwork you and they're going to beat you, or that you're going to miss an opportunity. So that is fear and manipulation at its highest. So that's enough to get it going, not enough to keep it going.
Yeah.
And so the problem with that is that when you set the foundation of your motivation around fear, as a coach or as a father, you're going to have that on your to-do list forever. Because you got to scare them, 10 minutes later, you got to scare them again. Or you got to yell at them again, or you got to yell at them every practice, Yeah. Why would we yell and why would we guess when we could take 2 minutes to find out what's most important to a kid? So if I got a kid who's, let's say his number 7 is like to pay back his grandma who, I don't know, maybe helped raise him or something. Now, the D1 scholarship might be in that kid's head, but grandma's in his heart.
Right.
And if I go over to him and if I go over to him and I say, hey, Johnny, look, I know today's a tough day for you, but I want you to dig in. We're going to practice like grandma is over there watching us today. Boom, I got him.
Yeah, nice.
I got him. And all I did was I gave back to him what he told me was most important to him when he needed it the most. That is positive, productive leverage. You can create a motivated player for life if you can find out what is most deeply important to that player. Now I don't have to mess around with all that mumbo jumbo. I don't have to scare him. I don't have to put up motivational posters. I just go right to what is true for him. And when we talk about getting into deeper levels of the heart, as a coach, a sports person, we want our kids to be mentally tough and we want our kids to have discipline, but everything we love about sports is about the heart.
Yeah.
Nobody says, boy, that guy played with a lot of intellect.
Right.
Right.
True.
No, they talk about that guy played with heart, right? That guy played with heart. He played with passion. Even Mariano Rivera, who was about as ice cold, right? There was still like there was a spirit about him. And every sports movie we like, I watch Miracle, watch Mighty Ducks. I defy any grown man to watch Rudy and not cry. And we like that because Rudy was a 5, 6, 7 guy. He found there was something deeper about him. And as I coach people, one of the things that I try and keep clients of mine focused on, if you like the movie Rudy, you don't like it because it's a great movie. It's not that great of a movie, right? I mean, as far as like cinematic quality, right?
Right?
No, you like it because it touches something that's true about you. It touches something so deeply true about you. You could watch Rudy. There's only a few movies. It's like Rocky, Rudy, and Step Brothers, right? Are the only 3 you can watch. Oh, they get better every time you watch them, right? And so, and that's why, because it touches that heart. It touches that part of us that is the most special. And so, when I do this with dads, and I also do it with sons, and sometimes it's so like you and I, Geoff, for the rest of our lives, we'll remember this moment. You could never be able to really unhear this. Again, we'll have a relationship in some way, even if we didn't talk or whatever, you'll remember this because this was probably the first time someone's taken the time to really ask you some really deep questions.
Right.
And so as a coach or as a father, if you're doing this with your son or I'm doing it with them, with their sons, whatever, is you're tapping into things that most people never tap into. Yeah. So as a coach, if you want your players to lay out for you, get dirty, play hard, win games, tap into something that no one else has tapped into. And they will play their rear ends off for you because they know you've seen what's truly important to them. You're not just holding up some D1 scholarship or fear that they might miss out. in front of them.
Yeah, Paul, I think to a level, maybe not 5, 6, 7, but I think, with my kids, I probably get to 2 and 3. But now that I've seen, I've listened to your show and stuff, and I've heard how powerful it is, but now that I see how powerful it is since it's been done on me, I think I need to try to go a little further to 5, 6, 7. So, Paul, let me ask you this. For several years I had teams, and I had several parents jump on me for not yelling at their kid. And I was just like, really, dude? I'm trying to teach your kid how to play some baseball and do things the right way. We're focusing on the big picture and why we're doing what we're doing. So for the parents that are listening and they're saying, you know what, I need a coach that can motivate my kid by yelling at him and stuff. Why is that approach desired by some parents?
So what the parent is really trying to tell you is I need someone to reach a level, reach something inside of my son that I know he's capable of, but I've yet to bring out. That's what they're really hoping to do. And they're hoping that if somebody just motivates them, yells at them, it'll wake up something that they know is inside of them. So it's really kind of weird to say, but one of the byproducts that's come out of the work I've done with a lot of dads is I work with them for a little while, and I work with their son, and they decide to quit baseball.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to play baseball.
Right.
When they were a kid, they liked it. When they were a little kid, now they're 10 or 11, 12 or 13, and they're like, hey, I don't want to do it anymore. I was just doing it because we're doing it together. Like I've had situations where the son's like, I've been just doing it because you like it. And the father's like, wait a minute, I'm just doing it because you like it.
Yeah.
Like neither of us like it. Oh, let's go to the movies.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so first of all, I would start with, where's that exterior pressure? Why is it important that somebody, if your son is not naturally motivated to move towards something, barring any exterior thing, you might want to look at what he's doing. So to many people's surprise, my sons don't play baseball. And it doesn't look like they will, and I could care less.
Right.
So I've taken an approach mainly because I get this kind of bigger view of things, that anything that my sons are going to do, I want their motivation to be naturally generated, to be self-generated motivation. I don't ever want to put them in a situation where they feel like they have to be something. Right. For dad, this was my life, not their life. My father was not a baseball person. So my father was in publishing. I guess I went into publishing, but that was different, not the same way.
Right.
But that's for me. So I would look for, if you have a constant motivation problem with your son, I would look at your activity. I would look at the activity you're doing, whether he really wants to do it. Now, if there's, but what they're really saying is they want someone to yell at them. They really want to tap into that. So I would suggest you start with a 5, 6, 7, because I've had players that I've worked with in this for so long that, man, they couldn't turn them on, and they turn on. I tell the story all the time of the first one they ever did. I was working with this pitcher, and you ever work with somebody so long that you're frustrated, and now you're frustrated over the frustration.
Yeah.
And that was the first 5, 6, 7 I ever did. I did it with his dad, and man, that kid lit up. Because his father, at the end of his 5, 6, 7, much like yours, his father's like, I just love my son. And that was the first time the son had heard his father articulate it that way. And all of a sudden, they're pressing on these goals this kid had to play at higher levels. And it's like, all that was gone. Wait a minute, you're just here because you love me? Well, give me the ball. I'll never forget that kid taking the ball. And his whole body language changed during that lesson that he pitched that day.
Nice.
And so I would look for that. The other reason why yelling doesn't work is that not all kids listen the same way. So here's something you could do with all your players, and you could do with your children. You can just in any conversation, ask them questions. Tell me about the Yankee game last night, or tell me about the last game, or what did you think about our season last year? And when you ask them that question, watch where their eyes go. If their eyes go up, they're bringing forth pictures. They're bringing forth images. They're up in their brain. If they kind of turn to the side, they're trying to hear. They're hearing things. They're trying to remember things that they heard. If they look down, they're going into their feelings. They're trying to look into their feelings. So if they look up, they're trying to create image. They're visual learners. Right? If they look to the side, they're auditory learners. That's going to be the lowest percentage of auditory learners.
Yeah.
If they look down, they're looking towards their feelings. Those are people that need to be kind of guided through things physically. So in those three situations, so let's say we got a kid who's a visual learner. I'm a visual learner, right? So, like I learned to play tennis years and years ago, 20 years ago, and I could not get the hang of it. I kept hitting it like a baseball, right? I was hit it all out of the court. Right. And all of a sudden, these 15-year-old kids started hitting the ball with topspin. And I was like, oh, you mean like that? Oh, okay, I could do that. And like, I got it in like 2 seconds. I'm a visual learner. I've been learning to play the bass guitar, because my son's playing the drums, and they told me if I could learn to play bass, that would be good for him to learn rhythm. Yeah. And so I'm trying to do all these stuff. I can't get it. And all of a sudden, I watched this guy who taught it. He's like, look, you just go this, 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 and this. And that makes the song. And he's got all these videos. I'm like, oh, I get that now. Like, okay, here. Got it. So I'm a visual learner.
Yeah.
An auditory learner is someone who needs to be explained things, right? That's going to be your lowest one. A perceptive learner is going to be the one that needs to be like, hey, look, your arms need to be in this position. You need to stand like this, or you need to feel the ball like this. You need to put them into things and they need to feel it more. Everyone needs a combination of all three, right? But what you want to do is you don't want to have a kid who is a visual learner who's got a coach who can only coach him through lecturing or through demonstrating. So you want to be able to see. So that will be another reason that where kids don't learn, or kids don't respond to that. So there's a kid who's a physical learner, and you got some guy yelling at him.
Yeah.
Just going to shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also too, nobody performs under any kind. Maybe higher level athletes, but any like amateur athletes. I mean, nobody really performs well under stress. There are people that respond to situations and to pressure and stuff like that differently, but stress is something very different. Yeah. Very different. I mean, you saw like even LeBron James, right? He's the greatest. This year he was under stress. He did not perform. There's a difference between pressure and stress. Last year was pressure, right? This year you could tell he was just stressed by the team he was with.
Yeah. Wow. So not to take up too much more of your time, but where do you see things going? What's the future? Because the world's going to keep moving fast. Things are going to change faster and faster and faster. So where do you see things going?
So I'll go two ways. First of all, the way culture is going. I'm terrified of where we're going as a culture.
Yeah.
And just because I deal with so many dads, so many young men, I see the effects are starting to accumulate. So to the fathers who are listening to this, there has never been a more important time in history for a father to have a connection with his son. And if a father is not willing to, and any child, I deal with a lot of fathers and sons, so just, please excuse the vernacular. But if you do not step up to father your children, there are corporations who are lined up to take your place. Right now, somewhere in the world, there is a meeting room at a social media company and a video game company and an app game company that are trying to figure out ways to design their products that will get our sons addicted to it. Mm-hmm. They're finding ways to get them addicted to social media. They're finding ways to get them addicted to video games and apps with all kinds of rewards and badges and levels to attain and color schemes that hit parts of your brain. And so there's even actually a course at Stanford about the psychological involvement of apps. This is a business course that teaches people how to create apps that create more psychological involvement. So basically, how to get your kids. This is Stanford. This isn't like,
Yeah.
There are pornography companies that are trying desperately to make sure that your sons see content that's not appropriate for them. And that is becoming a major, major, major issue I've been dealing with a lot of young men with. So there are people that are actively out there that will gladly take your son's attention if you cannot keep it. Will gladly steer your children in a different direction if we're not careful. From a baseball perspective, this is, I think, for me, it's an exciting time because I think baseball is poised to make some changes that might make the game more exciting. However, where I think it's going, I think the idea of Major League Baseball making some rule changes and somehow it will trickle down to the lower levels is insane. Yeah. The changes are going to come from some tournament director. There's going to be a tournament director who's going to run 36 teams and 7-inning games or 6-inning games and however many teams he can stuff in there and games per day. And he's going to go, you know what? Maybe if we play 4-inning games, we play 2 outs instead of 3 and 3 balls instead of 4 and 2 strikes instead of 3. And we start with a runner on second and we keep, we can play more games and we have more teams. We can make more money. That is coming. That is just 100% going to come. There's going to be speed baseball. Yeah. Now, here's the other thing. As much as like guys like me and you are like, oh man, like that's terrible. Like we were dinosaurs, right? We want to stay dinosaurs. But I can tell you, they're not wrong. The guys who are cooking this stuff up, they're not wrong. Because what's the biggest issue facing tournament baseball and travel baseball is pitch count and pitching injuries. Well, you play a 4-inning game and that takes care of that, right? So they're not all wrong. And I tell the coaches, like, if we want to remain dinosaurs, they will remember us by our fossils because the game will change. Yeah. And so what I think is going to happen is I think that's going to change. So you may have a 6-year-old, 7-year-old now that when these changes come, he's going to be playing that game for 8, 9, 10 years. And then when he gets to high school and college, and now a college team is recruiting him to play baseball, and this kid's been playing 4-inning speed baseball for the last 8 years, they're going to try and teach them a game. This kid doesn't know how to play. Yeah. Right? So it is going to come up from the ground up. That it is not going to come from Major League Baseball down. It's going to come from the ground up. What's interesting, too, is that Major League Baseball has a big problem with excitement, right? But youth baseball does not have an excitement problem. Right. Youth baseball is probably more exciting now. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of it, but for the people that are in it, it's exciting. Right. So I think that's going to change. I think you'll see it'll start with high schools and colleges switch to more tournament-based play. It's just going to be the way it is, right? There's just not going to be, I think that's going to be probably, I don't know, predicting it is very hard, right? Yeah. But I also think too that I think if you are a 15-year-old kid playing the game today, by the time you are in college, the game will change, especially if you are a pitcher, with 2 major changes coming in pitching. And one would be the pitch clock, right? That's going to limit the time between pitches. Now that has a catastrophic effect on a pitcher's recovery. Right. So pitchers are not going to be able to train the way they train. They're not going to be able to control the pace of the game. So if you can't control the pace of the reps, you're going to have to train different. So pitchers are going to have to train more intensely to be able to recover faster, to throw more pitches in less time. So that's going to change. Yeah. I think that's going to change the way pitching stats go. The first thing you're going to see is a rise, if you can imagine, even a further rise in pitching injuries. Oh yeah. Because of that. Right. The second thing is balls and strikes. Like we are headed to computers calling balls and strikes. Yeah. They have it in tennis. They have it. It works perfectly in tennis. It's an accepted part of tennis. And so now the way you pitch. Remember Greg Maddux getting those pitches 5-6 inches off home plate? Yeah. Because he was around the plate all day and he knew he could get one of those from the umpire if he needed them. Well, the computer's not going to give you that call. Yeah. So now you're going to have to pitch in the zone a lot more. Yeah. So now if you think about it from a pitching standpoint, you're going to be pitching. You have a shorter time to pitch. You're going to have to recover faster. You're going to have to pitch at a faster rate, and you have to keep the ball around the plate. Yeah. You're not going to get any call. You're not going to get a marginal call. So if you're a hitter, the future is a great big beautiful tomorrow. If you are a hitter, if you are a pitcher, I think you're going to have major changes to the way you pitch. If you are a 14-year-old, 15-year-old pitcher, the way you pitch in college will be radically different from the way you pitch now. Wow. And so all those are, I think, like I said, so now you're a father. Right? You're a father of a 10-year-old kid, and he wants a cell phone to get on all these apps and these games and all these other. And then you're training him for a game that is going to be changing differently. So it's a lot. It's a lot that's going on. The one thing we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know when it's going to happen. But the one thing we can count on is that things are going to continually be different, a lot different.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I'm curious to see how Major League Baseball continues to handle it. I think what you saw in Bryce Harper and Manny Machado was far more impactful than maybe people think. Yeah. Because here, Philadelphia and San Diego are not exactly baseball utopias.
Right.
Philadelphia is a good town, but this is not Boston, New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago.
Right.
That like 3 years ago, right, they were predicting that one of those teams is just going to back up the Brinks truck for Bryce Harper and give him $400 million.
Right.
And now you see you got the three highest paid players in baseball in Philadelphia, San Diego, and Anaheim.
Yeah.
And I think what teams are seeing, and what I've just buddies that I have in baseball, they're saying if you want to make money in baseball, it's putting a winning team on the field.
Yeah.
And a winning team, you don't need superstar players. It's not like basketball. If LeBron James signed with the Knicks would be sold out every night and they could go 500. But Mike Trout coming to the Cubs or the Reds, that doesn't guarantee that, they're going to be sold out every night. They still got to put a winner on the field. And I think what the sports science and the sabermetrics and the stats and all this information is coming in is they're saying that, you don't need big players to put winning teams on the field. So I know that was a long answer, but
no.
Fair on that one.
Yeah. So obviously, there's this concept of, everything kind of operating like a pendulum, and you just got to keep pushing one way far enough just to see how far too far. So with the data and the animation stuff, how much further do you think that's going to go? Because, we've already seen some teams saying, maybe we've gone a little too far, and then they're kind of starting to work back toward the middle. But there's also some teams that are going way, way, way too far the other way. So how far does it have to go?
I think from on a major league, perspective, I think for teams that don't have huge budgets, like Houston, like Oakland, right, like Pittsburgh, that it's a competitive advantage, right? That could they somehow get a team together based on all of these metrics that could win games, right? So that's exciting in that respect. Mark Teixeira made a great point at the end of last year. He was doing play-by-play, and he said, look, you could bring in the world's leading experts on all of this information, all of this data, and you could have put them in the Baltimore Orioles still would have lost 100 games last year.
Right.
So at the end of the day, human beings do have to go out and play.
Yeah.
I think, I think the bigger thing is when the machines get on the field, when they're calling balls and strikes, that's going to take an element of the game out. I think even it's going to take a little bit of the drama out of the game, that little adversarial relationship between a manager and an umpire that's kind of always there in the game, right? Yeah. I think there are some people in that world that are driving that world, that look at baseball as a fantasy league and as a video game, that if you just put all these things into play, it should spit out this. I just don't think at the end of the day, it's like human beings still have to do it, and human beings are not machines. They don't always perform the way they do, even though there may be some statistics or averages that they can apply to that. You can't say that, okay, if that, you could say if this pitcher makes this pitch to this spot against this hitter, he'll hit 240. But you can't say that if he gets the pop-up that you said he was going to get, you can't say that the guy's going to catch it. Right. Like players still drop balls, right? They drop balls. Players swing and miss at pitches they should crush, and pitchers, make pitchers, throw balls away and throw balls in the dirt. So there's just a human element to the game.
Yeah.
And I think in these situations, they tend to self-correct. I think there's always a sway and thing. Remember when the Red Sox did bullpen by committee, and they thought that was going to be a big thing, and then there was all different things. So I always think that the game self-corrects. I think the biggest problem baseball has right now is a 3-hour baseball game.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the time I watched a full baseball game.
Yeah.
you watch it here and there with Aaron Judge up and Stanton up. We're the Yankees, we live in New Jersey, so I can't remember the last time I sat down and watched a whole game, but I did watch the whole Duke basketball game on Sunday or whenever that was.
They're using the numbers and the data to almost put a value on guys. So if a guy ages and his bat speed goes down, does that get used against him? Yeah, so it's like we're not even valuing past performance anymore.
Yeah, and I think also I think the contracts, I think you're going to see those. I think you're going to see those be really different.
Yeah.
Especially for a pitcher. I think especially for a pitcher, I don't think you're going to see many big contracts, especially now as you see that these matchups of relievers and hitters and the data drives these numbers that say, hey, keeping a starting pitcher in the game for too long is statistically bad. And so now 4 innings is like a great start. 5 innings is like, wow, you really went crazy for us. I pulled the guy out with a no-hitter the other night, right?
Right.
And so now, like, are you going to pay a guy $35 million to pitch 4 innings?
Right.
So that's it's a difficult thing. And you also cannot argue that one dominant pitcher in the right spot can carry your team through a postseason. We've seen that. Kevin Brown, Pedro Martinez, right? We've seen that. So I think it's something that will self-correct. I think it's a new shiny new toy for baseball. I think it probably saves them from some bad contracts.
Yeah.
So there is some validity to it. On the flip side of that, the one measurement of batting average, right, tells kind of one story of a hitter. So let's say 10, 15 years ago, you had a guy hitting 250 in Double A. They're like, I don't know, he's hitting 250. But now they're looking at exit velocity and bat speed, and they're like, you know what? He's hitting the ball hard. Maybe he's just getting a little unlucky, or maybe he's just in some ballparks that are whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So on the flip side of that, there could be some data that will help players that maybe would have gotten overlooked based on previous, data. So
true. Well, Paul, this has been awesome. So for someone that's listening and they want to kind of jump on a call with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, so they go 2 places. They go baseballeducationcenter.com is the main hub for kind of all the programs we produce. And then baseballdadsshow.com, and they can link to, all the stuff that we do there. We got a lot of kind of stuff they can download over there and get in touch with me from there.
All right. Well, Paul, sir, I appreciate your time. I'm Geoff Rottmayer. Thank you for listening to our conversation on the Baseball Awakening podcast. Stay tuned for our show next week.
Ways interview.